Hello everyone, my name is Shudipta Rai. Today I, along with my friend colleague Rahul, going to talk to you about securing workload using Service Mesh. Security is an important construct for your application, irrespective of the organization that you belong to or the kind of role that you play for your organization. We will see how a Service Mesh can help you better the security posture for your application in a completely non-intrusive way. But to do that, let me quickly get through the agenda. We'll first of all introduce what a sidecar is. We'll also introduce what a control plane is and how these two things can help you with your modernization journey. How a sidecar can help you with encryption, authentication, authorization. At the end, we'll also look at one auth to flow, wherein we'll give you an example wherein we have offloaded the complete auth to out from an application onto a sidecar. Moving forward, let's look at a typical modernization journey, right? So we have a monolith application here. Let's say it's written in Python. However small or big the application is, it is trying to do three things. It is trying to connect, secure, and observe. With secure, what I mean is maybe it's implementing MTLS. And to do that, it is embedding the certificate into the application. With observe, maybe it is exposing some kind of APIs, and we need to know whether you're receiving 200 OK for all the APIs. Now, all of these things are done by embedding libraries into the application. Now, till the point this is one single monolith application, it's all good. But in your modernization journey, we have multiple teams coming in, and they are trying to break this particular monolith into smaller microservices. Let's say one other team has chosen to use Golang as the preferred language to break this monolith into smaller microservices and implement some other feature. But the moment it happens, what creeps in is feature parity. All the libraries that you're trying to embed into the application, they will never be same. You will always have a feature parity. And now that it's broken into multiple microservices, you don't know which microservice is going to have an expiry of cert next. And the moment that happens, you lose that particular microservice. So you're losing your control on your microservice or the application. This is not why you started your modernization journey. Why you started your modernization journey is to make sure that you only focus on the business logic. And all of these cross-cutting concerns that we talked about should be offloaded outside of the application. How can we achieve that? We can achieve that by using something called a sidecar pattern. A sidecar is a proxy which sits just next to your application, and it receives each and every connection that happens to and fro from the application. Because it is staying, or because it has such a strategic position, we can offload, connect, secure, and observe to this. And this is what makes Service Mesh, this is what gives Service Mesh the greatest advantage. It has also achieved a higher sense of separation between the business logic and all the cross-cutting concerns. But this is what you want. So this particular sidecar, it can be used for each and every language, and because it can be used for each and every language, what you get is integration cost. You integrate once and you're done. You don't need to integrate again. So using such a pattern, what you receive is you receive a lower integration cost, you receive a lower engineering cost, a lower maintenance cost, and all of this is happening in a completely non-intrusive way, which again brings down your time to market. This is the right time to introduce what a service mesh is. A service mesh is an abstraction layer that takes care of service-to-service communication, observability, and resiliency away from the developer onto a declarative configuration layer. A service mesh has two major components. One is called a proxy and one is called a control plane. Proxy is something that we already looked upon in the previous slide. It helps you with connect, secure, and observe. With connect, what I mean is L7 routing, load balancing, service discovery, rate limit, quota, circuit breaking. All of these are very, very important for any modern language, and all of these is something that you get for free the moment you take this particular sidecar pattern. It also helps you achieve authentication and authorization. It completely takes away the certificate lifecycle management. It's a very big plus. A sidecar also emits a lot of logs, a lot of events, and you can build a complete alerting solution on top of that. But again, sidecar in isolation can do nothing. It has to be programmed, and that is where the control plane kicks in. The control plane is the plane with which you as a user interact to, and you pass on your configuration. The control plane converts that configuration into something which the sidecar understands. The choice of control plane also determines the kind of control and policy enforcement that you can do with your microservices. So it is an important aspect whenever you think about implementing service mesh. Going forward, we are going to look into the security and the policy aspect in this particular presentation. And to do that, I will hand it over to Rahul. Over to you, Rahul. Thanks.
Hello, let's understand the security landscape in Istio. Uh, there are two tools, the X509 certificates and JOT tokens, and the actions can be broadly classified into encryption, authentication, and authorization. So encryption depends on X509 certificates. The authentication depends on both the certificate and the JOT token. And the identity that is built out of the authentication mechanism is used by the authorization mechanism in Istio to actually enforce fine-grained policies. So let's cover the tools. The JOT token first. So the JOT token is a kind of a signed token which is broadly made up of three areas. So the first is header, the second is the payload, and the third is the verified signature. So if you change the payload, the signature cannot be verified. So that's the mechanism which JOT token uses to securely transfer the payload. The certificate is another mechanism which is used, the tool which is used. So this is how a certificate would look if you open it in a file. If you use the OpenSSL utility, it can be decoded and you can see the various components. The components which are of major interest are highlighted here: the issuer, the validity, the subject, the CN in particular, or the subject alternate name, the SAN name, which is embedded in the certificate as identity. So let's understand how certificates are generated. So most of the, a typical company has a team which is the root CA, which generates the root CA and maintains it. The application team generates a key pair, the public and the private key, and it generates a cert sign request, which is sent over to the root CA for attestation and signing. So the root CA first checks the identity which is embedded in the CSR, and if it can verify that the identity belongs to the person who says that he's the person, then it actually signs the certificate and sends it back in form of a digital certificate. So let's understand the first classification of operation of security in Istio, which is encryption. So for encryption, Istio uses X509 certificates. So I'm sure most of you are aware how certificates are used in encryption, but just a refresher. So the client sends a hello message, the server sends back the certificate, the client verifies the certificate, and then it generates a secret key which it sends in being encrypted using this certificate. So that secret key can only be decoded by the private key, which is held by the server. Then it uses this certificate for continuing the rest of the communication. So the first part is the asymmetric key, which is used for the symmetric key exchange, and the rest of the traffic is secured by symmetric key, which is like much faster and hence. So what are the challenges with application certificates? So securing the private key for the workloads, the certificate is a public a public identity of a workload. So, and it can be shared publicly, but the private key is actually the secret that needs to be maintained. So how do we encrypt the key when we are sending it into the workload, or how do we store the key when it is at rest? So this is like a big challenge. How do we ensure the certificate are renewed before they expire? How do we attest and say, the workload which is requesting the certificate is really the workload which has requested it, and it's not somebody who's trying to become somebody else and do mean things. So attesting workload certificate is very important, and also it becomes specifically important in while we transition to the container ecosystem, right? So how do we create the certificate first, or how do we attest a container? So the traditional systems have used HTTP challenge or DNS challenge, so that changes a bit in the container ecosystem, and we'll discuss about it in later slides, and how Istio actually solves this problem. So how do we revoke workload certificates? Do we fall back on short-lived certificates, or implement a protocol like OCSP or CRL? So, and how do we ensure that where our certificate should be trusted? What is the trust boundary? If there are like multiple clusters, should it be trusted across clusters? If it has to be done, what would be the trust bundle exchange mechanism? So for most of these challenges, Istio relies on something called SPIFFE standard. That is like a complete topic in its own. We'll try to cover as much as possible. So at first we define how certificate is provisioned in Istio. So when your application comes up on any Kubernetes cluster, a kube cluster actually injects a token corresponding to the service account which is there in the pod. So if you have defined a service account, it explicitly gets that service account, or otherwise it picks up this service account which is there for the default. It picks up the default service account which is there in the namespace. So the token gets injected based on the service account, and when the application comes up, the pilot agent takes this token and sends it and creates a CSR key pair, a CSR, and it sends it along with the service account token. Now the Istio CA, when it receives this request, it forwards it to the kube cluster to check the validity of this token against the token review API, and then it validates that the workload which is requesting it is really the workload which it says it is. So post this attestation, this Istio CA returns back a signed certificate, and then the pilot agent pushes the key and the certificate via an Envoy SDS mechanism. This not only ensures the secure delivery, but also ensures that the certificates are hot reloaded, and you don't have to restart your application pod every time you are renewing certificates. Also, one key thing which you have to notice over here is that your key pair, the private key, is never leaving the pod. So an enhanced form of security as well, right? So let's understand how authentication is achieved. If you look at the authentication based on certificate, we have a decoded Istio workload certificate. So the key things that we would want to see over here is the validity, which is by default 24 hours, but it can be made even shorter. So Istio relies on short-lived certificates and does not rely on any revocation list or OCSP. In comparison to a traditional certificate, the CN field is empty. Rather, the identity of the workload is embedded into the SAN, and it is in SPIFFE format. So which consists of the cluster identity as well as the namespace and service account identity. It's the SVID, the SPIFFE ID, is actually a summation of both of this. So in a mutual TLS scenario, your server and client both have to retrieve the certificate. The certificate contains the vetted identity, which is embedded in the certificate for the given workload, and it is easy to enforce MTLS across the mesh with use of Istio CRDs. So there is a CRD called peer authentication, which defines what kind of traffic will be accepted. So you can and then there is a destination rule CRD, which actually governs what kind of traffic will leave your workload. So the kind of TLS modes that can be enforced when the traffic is sent is simple, mutual, or Istio mutual, or disabled. So difference between mutual TLS and Istio mutual is that the certificate in Istio mutual is signed by Istio CA, and in mutual it could be any external CA. So the policies to accept traffic could be strict, permissive, or disabled. So in a permissive mode, it accepts both encrypted and plain text, and it is primarily used for migration scenario where some of your workloads have been migrated to MTLS, but you're still in process, and some of them might be migrated a little later. So let's also understand the authentication which is achieved via JOT. So typically your client application, it requests for a JOT, and the authentication server mints it and responds with a JOT which is signed using the private key. So your client application sends the JOT token along with its request in the header. The service then fetches the public key and verifies the JOT token, and once it is verified, it extracts the payload, and whatever is there in the payload can be through the validation, it ensures that the payload has not been tampered with. So request authentication CRD in Istio helps to extract this metadata, but it needs to be used in conjunction with authorization policy to make a real sense. So it just extracts the data, but you can only allow or deny traffic, or you can apply policy using authorization policy. So whenever you're using request authentication, you need to use authorization policy along with it. So let's look at authorization in a little more detail. So if you have like services, the front end service is talking to the back end service. You have the JWT authentication filter and a cert based peer authentication filter, which kind of perform the authent functionality, and they extract the payload or claims and out of the JOT token and SA service account token and the namespace info out of the certificate. So this is stored in the filter metadata, and this filter metadata is used by the fine-grained authorization policy, and you can build fine-grained rules around who can access what or when. And let's see an example. So this is an example of a JOT, extracting issuer out of the JOT token, and then using this an authorization policy to ensure that you have requests coming out of couple of issuers, defined issuers actually. You can use cert and JOT in conjunction. So typically JOT is used in the north-south scenario, and the MTLS used in east-west scenario, but JOT can also be used in an east-west scenario. But this policy clearly lays out how you can have identities which have come out of the certificate, and then there are identities which have come out of the JOT token, and you can build an authorization policy to kind of allow, deny traffic which is coming from a source, or if it follows a given condition.
Thank you, Rahul. Next, we are going to look into an example pattern to see how we have been able to protect an application without making a single line of code change to it. But to understand that, we need to understand what a bearer token is. A bearer token is nothing but a JWT token. A user receives it at the end of the OAuth2 workflow when it has successfully authorized or authenticated itself against the authorization server. This particular bearer token is always passed to the protected endpoint. The protected endpoint receives this particular bearer token, it cracks it open to look at something called claims. Claims is a part of the payload here. If the claims are right, then the user is allowed access to the protected endpoint. If the claims are not right, user is not allowed access. Now, these claims can differ. These claims can differ if the protected endpoint can somehow let the authorization server know that it should mint the bearer token only to be used at this particular protected endpoint and nowhere else. It, it does it by adding an extra parameter called resource, as you can see in the right. With the extra information that you receive as a part of claim, you can write much finer policies. Let's understand this with an example here. Let's say you have an application, a legacy application called HR World. This is a utility application and there are still users of this. And this particular application should be used only by employees who have HR roles, and all the non-HR folks should not be able to use this particular application. But how can you even achieve that? A sidecar pattern can help here. Envoy proxy being the choice of the sidecar here, you can program Envoy proxy in such a way that when a user is trying to access the application, the Envoy can look into the HTTP headers to see whether there are any bearer token available or not. If there are no bearer token available, it can initiate a OAuth 2 workflow for you. The moment OAuth 2 workflow is initiated, a user gets a JWT. The user passes the JWT back to Envoy. Now Envoy can verify whether the JWT is right. If the JWT is right, then it has capability to look into the claims. It can extract the claims and it can match whether the claim matches what is programmed, which is employee role equal to HR. And in case if it does, then it will allow access to the backend application. It is a very powerful pattern, and we have been able to move a lot of application using this pattern from an old platform to a new platform like Kubernetes. OS2 already had this particular workflow, but then this is a recent contribution that I made to Envoy proxy. I added the capability to add the resource parameter, and when we did that, we started receiving final claims, and that actually unblocked all of these patterns. In JPMC, because of the sheer volume that we see these kind of use cases popping up each and every day. In case these kind of use cases is something that you look forward to or excites you, feel free to reach any one of us. With this, I'd like to thank you for listening to us patiently, and I would also like to thank Kubernetes Community Day for inviting us to their forum. Thank you.